Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn to Gidon because I'm conscious of time. And I just sort of encourage people, there's already some questions coming up on the Slido. So please do um, start putting those in the chat so we make sure that we get around to all of them. So Gidon, so Gidon Bromberg is the co-founder and 27-year Israel director of EcoPeace Middle East. So that's really, I guess you have such a history now, Gidon, in thinking about what are some of the, I guess, what are some of the opportunities that some of these kind of challenges provide in terms of working across communities in conflict and fragile affected settings? I mean, your work, I guess, is trying to look at how do you, how do you, I mean, for, you know, how do you think about the climate change challenges that are affecting the Middle East at the moment, of which they are huge, particularly in terms of water insecurity? And how do you try and use that to work across some very disparate communities who don't normally talk to each other to address some of those challenges? And also, how applicable do you feel is some of the work that EcoPeace is doing to other fragile settings in the world that have similar tensions but different climate change challenges?
So, Claire, thank you so much for that question and for the opportunity to speak in this distinguished panel. Firstly, for those that are not aware, EcoPeace is an example of a civil society organization where Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israelis work together. And I think that's really critical. I'm a co-director. I have a Palestinian co-director. I have a Jordanian co-director. We're about 70 staff in our three offices in our three countries working together, developing these strategies and trying to solve some of the very pertinent issues that we face. I think we need to put the context into place that in protracted conflict areas, there are very few entry points to build trust. Our peoples, our governments don't agree on anything, and therefore, because it's a protracted conflict, there is no faith on any side now, and people have lost faith that there'll ever be peace. The climate crisis, however, presents an issue of urgency that's desperately missing from the peace paradigm, from advancing peace. And if there's something that all sides can agree on, is that the climate crisis is real, that it's happening right now. And in the Middle East, as you commented, we're not talking about the theory of future impacts. The Mediterranean, off the coast where, the city that I live on in Tel Aviv or in Gaza, where we have staff, the temperature has increased by 2 degrees in these recent decades. While the rest of the world is worried about a 1.5 degree increase in temperatures, we are currently experiencing 1.5 degrees increase in temperature, and we're expecting a further 4 degrees increase in temperature. We're one of the most water scarce parts of the world, where the climate crisis is already reducing water scarcity to the extent that we've had 15 years of drought in our region in the last 20 years. So therefore, as an example, water authorities, be they in Palestine, in Jordan, and in Israel, complete agreement that the climate crisis is a threat to water security, to the national security interests of all of our parties. And it's in that context that report and a call calling for a green-blue deal. It's really inspired by Europe and the European group, very much particular to our part of the world, because sort of the climate crisis doesn't hit just one country. It hits a region in a particular way. And if we're to survive the climate crisis, what our report highlights, what scientific reports of the IPCC highlight, is that we have to respond not just in a national way, but in a regional way. And we've already seen one of the pillars of our Green Blue Deal report advancing. And a year ago, we saw a letter of intent being signed by Jordan and Israel to create a water energy nexus. At this COP, we saw a memorandum of cooperation, again, signed by these countries, highlight cooperation. We can advance desperately needed water security and adaptation, climate adaptation in that manner, but also climate mitigation. And really the example that's moving forward is how Jordan, with its vast desert areas, can produce large-scale renewables at prices and at scale and that Israel and Palestine could only dream of, and help meet the challenges of the climate commitments in Israel and Palestine, but also then use the renewable energy to power desalination plants on the Mediterranean, currently in Israel, but also planned for Gaza, to meet the increasing water security needs of our countries, but also then to sell additional water to neighboring Jordan through that process. And the real sort of political change that we see is healthy interdependencies being created. Really very similar to the fact that our environment is shared, we're recreating those types of dependencies, but in a healthy way, where each side has something to contribute, where each side has something to sell and each side has something to buy.
Thank you so much, Gidon.